Hello, everybody. My name is Octavius Lamont Blount. I'm the coordinator for the Office of Black Male Engagement. I'm here with Marc Lamont Hill. And for the purpose of these Spotlight series, we're here just to spotlight black men in the city that are doing great work and also how they impact black men and boys in the city of Philadelphia. So, Dr. Marc Lamont Hill, how you doing?
Oh, man, I'm glad to be here. I'm honored that you invited me.
Okay. Now, there's a few questions I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you about, who are you? What you do.
I can answer that.
Yeah, I can definitely. I know you can answer that one.
I know who I am. I got my driver's license with me.
Yeah.
Marc Lamont Hill. Mm-hmm. I am the owner of Uncle Bobby's Coffee and Books, coffee house and bookstore in Germantown. I'm also a professor at Temple University, and I am a commentator on CNN and a host at BET, and an activist and organizer. Most proudly, I'm a father.
Yeah.
Philadelphia. I'm a Sixers fan. Lots of things.
You got to be a Sixers fan.
Got to be, especially nowadays.
Now, if you can tell me a little bit about the roles that you have. I know you said you worked at Temple.
Yeah.
I looked up your little bio. Worked at Morehouse. You also went to University of Penn.
Yeah.
If you could tell me a little bit about those experiences at Morehouse and
Temple. Before all that, I was a product of Philadelphia Public Schools.
Mm-hmm.
Went to a bunch of elementary and middle schools. It's a long story for another time. But I ended up in high school at George Washington Carver, High School of Engineering and Science. I literally just left there on my way here. I stopped by. And from there, I went to Morehouse. I stayed at Morehouse for a bit. In my sophomore year, I left for a variety of reasons. And I was still trying to figure life out.
Yeah.
I eventually came back to Temple University, where I finished. After that, I taught in Philadelphia Public Schools. I taught at Furnace High School.
Yeah.
Taught high school Spanish.
Yeah.
Then I taught in the Twilight program in English. Then I went back to graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania. And after getting my PhD, I then went back to Temple again to be a professor. Taught there for a bit. Went to New York, taught at Columbia. Went to Atlanta, taught at Morehouse. And then for the third time, I went back to Temple University, where I now hold the Steve Charles Endowed Chair in Media Cities and Solutions. And I'm very, very grateful for that position. I'm very grateful to have an opportunity to engage the community, engage media, engage ideas, and try to lead the world better than I found it.
Okay. I like that last part. Leave the world better than you found it. As far as, I know you talked about, your educational trajectory. Could you talk a little bit about, I know you called yourself an activist. I've watched you talk about certain issues and certain things that go on in Philadelphia and beyond. If you don't mind explaining what you do as far as being an activist and what you connect with and focus on.
As an activist, I think there are lots of ways to be an activist, particularly in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Some of us go to rallies and protests. Some of us lead campaigns or participate in campaigns. Some of us use social media as a way to draw attention to an issue. But my activism is always attempting to be an intervention into a matter in such a way that I produce a different result than would otherwise happen, but also to put a spotlight on that issue. So for example, when we filled the highways and shut down highways after Eric Garner was killed in New York, the goal wasn't to shut down the highway. The goal was to draw attention to this unjust circumstance that happened when Daniel Pantaleo choked him out. The highway was the mechanism. The sit-in is the mechanism. The hashtag is the mechanism. And so these mechanisms we use to draw attention to issues. In addition to being an activist, though, I'm also an organizer. And as I've grown as an activist, I am only now comfortable saying that I also organize. And that's important. We have a lot of activists out there, but we need people who are willing to organize, who are willing to shape the activism, shape the action, shape the intervention in such a way that we not only are responsive to a matter, but we can proactively think about what we want to do down the road.
Okay. Now, you've talked about being an activist and now being an organizer and that platform that you have. I know you had this platform of being on CNN, Huffington Post, and also writing, I think, for the Tribune.
I have at different times written for various places, Tribune, Philadelphia Daily News. I had a column in the Metro.
Okay.
You know, journalism and television more broadly, for me, is an opportunity to engage the public.
Yeah.
You know, every part of my life, I think, involves an educational component, whether I'm learning or whether I'm teaching.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in a classroom, sometimes it's at the bookstore,
Yeah.
sometimes it's on CNN. And the goal of those conversations, quite frankly, is to be a paid pest.
Okay.
You know, white supremacy doesn't take a day off. Patriarchy doesn't take a day off. Homophobia doesn't take a day off. It's my job to annoy the powerful and to take away some of that power, to strip away at some of that power, not by talking for the vulnerable, but talking with the vulnerable, helping create space for the vulnerable to expand their voice, to amplify their voice. At BET, my job is to tell stories.
Yes, it is.
And I try to tell stories of us, black people, that wouldn't get told if we weren't there. At CNN, my job is to fight the good fight and to be a public defender. And I'm beginning now to produce my own content in various platforms so that I don't just have to respond to the story of the day, I get to help create the story of the day.
Okay. Now, out of all that, I know your platform is stretched very wide as far as individuals knowing who you are. With the bookstore that you have, Uncle Bobby's, and plus the platform that you have, how do you think you're impacting the community that's around in Germantown and also maybe those that are outside of Germantown?
You know, to some extent, I think the community will answer that question, you know, and the story will be told on what Uncle Bobby's means and what it will mean throughout history. But my goal for it is to create another hub.
Okay.
We're so divided.
Yeah.
And I mean physically divided. You know, you're on social media and you could be in a relationship and the person who you're closest to in the world, you sit next to on the couch and y'all on social media, talking to somebody, not talking to each other.
Yeah.
And then there's somebody who you have no business talking to across the world and you might be on social media having a conversation. So sometimes social media takes people who are close together and pulls them apart, and people who are far apart and pulls them together. Sometimes that's cool, sometimes it's not. But we still need physical places where we can talk and engage, look in each other's eyes, see how each other's doing, learn from each other, teach each other, support each other, nurture each other. Uncle Bobby's is one of those places. Growing up in Philadelphia, we had bookstores like Hakeem's, which is still very much alive on 52nd Street.
Yeah.
But we also had stores like Robbins downtown, or we had the basic books and basic black books in the gallery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those spaces are shrinking where you could go and get black books, black ideas, black community, black culture, black tradition. And so I wanted to help create a space for black folk to come together and engage each other, not just about what's hot on the radio, not just about social matters, although we need that too, but also about matters of intellect, matters of spirit, matters of self-improvement. And I hope that Uncle Bobby's, when the final story on Uncle Bobby's is told many, many years from now, I hope they say that Uncle Bobby's is a place where people could be themselves, where they could grow, where they could find refuge.
Now, I know that you said, as far as making that impact and that platform that you have for the community, what was the sole reason why you started Uncle Bobby's?
I don't know if there was a sole reason, but I will say that there was a gap.
Okay.
You know, I was in Germantown and I wanted some coffee. And it's like, black people like coffee too.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to consume coffee in places that won't kick us out, like Starbucks. Right? We need to be able to go places and see each other. White people are the only people to make coffee. Coffee starts in Africa. And yet we can't yield that to anybody else. We can do it too. I wanted a black bookstore. I wanted a place to write. I wanted a place to think. I wanted a place to get some sweet potato pie and listen to Stevie Wonder. All in the same room. We didn't have one, so I did my best to create something that would feel a part of that. Toni Morrison, the towering writer of the 20th century, says that if there's a book that you really want to read and it doesn't exist, you have to write it. If there are spaces that we want to occupy that aren't built yet, you have to build them. Because I have the resources and I had an idea, I decided to build something for us. And that was the motivation. There was a need.
Okay. Before we go, is there anything that you want to say to the listeners right now as far as being a black man in this world and how your trajectory or the opportunities that you were provided and open doors to, how do you think you would like black men to navigate those spaces?
I think we have to navigate these spaces with a sense of confidence, a sense of dignity, a sense of self-determination, in a world that doesn't want us to have any of those things. They don't want us to control our own destinies. They don't want us to love ourselves or each other. They don't want us to see beauty or peace or intelligence or humanity in each other's bodies. So we have to constantly navigate that world. But the piece of that also is when you look at me, any success that I've had isn't the product of me working harder than everybody else. I work hard, but a lot of people work hard. Some ways I was fortunate to have networks of nurture and communities of care that supported me when other people didn't get that support. Sometimes I was just lucky that I didn't get caught when somebody else did, doing the same foolishness. But at all times, any success I have is due to the village. It's not due to any individual superiority that one of us has over another. I say that so that as we continue to navigate and build in the midst of chaos, we can remember that we can't win unless we support each other. We can't win unless we protect each other. We can't win unless we mentor each other. That's what makes what you do so important. That's what makes what Jack Drummond does so important, that you all create the context to understand who we are, to study who we are, to support who we are, and to create new possibilities for all of us.
Okay. I want to thank you.
I want to thank you
for coming in
It's
and
my
actually
pleasure.
providing a well thought out background and summary of what you do, because I know you do a lot. And just being able to provide the listeners with a better understanding of who you are and what you do.
I'm glad I
So
could
if
do
y'all
it.
can all check us out at our next Spotlight series, that'll be great.